First thing anybody can do almost is hang a feeder somewhere outside where you can see it, even apartments usually. So this is the start of a nature nook, as a feeder such as a hummingbird feeder that you clean out a couple times a week at least, and you put in fresh water mixed 3 or 4 to 1 with just plain old white sugar. You don't want to use other stuff. Lots of plants around is always good. And you can have a mix of hummingbirds, love all the blossoming things, native and otherwise, so having a mix is good. We like to hang pots, just any old thing that will grow stuff, like this old barrel here that's actually got, let's see if I can find it. Yes, this is tomato. Right here in the middle of there, we're going to have tomatoes. But of course, you can see the morning glories love to take over, and we let them. This little papyrus plant goes back in the house for the winter just for some more green. But that's a lot of fun. And hanging plants are actually pretty easy to do almost anywhere. Hi guys, they're still yawning. This is backyard hedge that grew into a real bushy landscape behind the house. They love this. You can prune down low, end up with kind of a western look, or leave a lot of brush. This is a hideout for small birds. Catbird nests in here every year. One year the nest was literally right here straight over my head. As you walk out the back door, we had the catbird nest. This year it's down on the other end. There is a mix of some trees, like that's a kind of an ornamental willow, but it provides a wonderful place to have feeders and for the birds' structure and habitat. So lots of places to put feeders is fun, even small trees. A pond is always a good idea. And or oriole feeder. We had orioles this year, and they're still coming, some, but the hummingbird feeder will use the oriole feeder too. And of course, lots of birds like a simple tray with some suet and a little grape jelly and some oranges. I need to refresh that. And this is my favorite kind of feeder, Barb found. That's sort of a squirrel-proof one, although we don't mind if the squirrels and chippies have some too much. But that one, they're easy to clean, really sturdy, and they last forever. They really are great feeders. This is a bee thing here. There's probably bees coming and going here, hanging on the wall. Let's see if there's any right now. But a lot of bees will use any little cavity like that. The birdhouses here are live and used. We had wrens nest in this one again this year, and had babies and brought them around the yard. They're already probably on a second nesting. Well, actually, black-capped chickadees in this one. I take that back. The wrens are on a second nesting back here in another house hanging under the trees. Having bird baths, even a small one with a trickle, is wonderful for birds. They come all winter to this one. We replaced this concrete thingy that somebody gave me, actually. It's kind of big, I guess, and they didn't know what to do with it. And they are expensive, unfortunately, but you can also make your own, kind of like we did with the plastic tubs. And a little trickle of water, even, or just standing water, is wonderful for bugs. This one, the birds come all winter long. We put a heater on there, run a little extension cord into the garage through one of the holes that the chippies made. We don't mind the holes. They stay. They've never done any harm in the garage, really. They just come and go, like to explore. This rack was used to raise native plants this last winter, over winter, in milk jugs. I'll just show you a tiny bit of the garage. Milk jugs in the garage here. People donated a bunch. You cut them almost in half, flip them open, put some dirt in and a few seeds, and you can grow prairie seeds in over the winter, get them started naturally. This is where we keep most of the bird seed, under the sunshine, water, and trees here. There is your mixed seed. Having them in metal is a good idea, because otherwise your squirrels are going to chew eventually into whatever else, and they will find a way in the garage. Like I said, they made one hole back there years ago. They've never made any more holes. I just leave that one so they can explore. And it's not much trouble. And a large one here is just for extra supplies like corn on the cob and suet and whatnot. So having a couple metal cans over the years they're not real cheap, but they're a great investment. for if you're going to do bird feeding. This is something I got that were being tossed out. They're the bulk food dispensers, grains and rice and popcorn and whatnot. They work absolutely wonderful, and the squirrels don't chew on these for some reason. So I made a little rack. The other thing that works really well on a smaller scale is old Christmas tins or popcorn tins. So you can do that. There are other supplies here like guards for the bird houses, more bottles. I put it on Nextdoor and people keep donating jars. My favorite ones actually lately are, I drink a lot of organic juice. As you can see, it's embarrassing. But these cut in half or 3/4 really well, and they're highly reusable, many years probably, as little mini greenhouses. Here's some bluebird boxes my friend Steve Lang made that are ready to go to the next bluebird trail. We just put in one at Tenney Park this year, and it already has a bunch of birds. And I've also replaced some old houses with these. And the poles are donated by Madison Parks, which is wonderful. So it is possible to do volunteer work without having to spend a lot if you kind of ask around and try to get support from different groups and donors. Steve, we actually try to pay him something for these houses. He puts a lot of work into them. And the ones with the hole in the top are for sparrow deterrents, and they actually work pretty well. We have places that used to have house sparrows all the time, had to throw the nests out every week, and they just don't bother them as much. I can't say it's 100%, but it works pretty good. So now we're going to go under the huge old 200-year-old oak at least here, because we lost its sister when it was 182 in the front yard due to an oak dieback on top, and we're not sure why, because this one's doing fine. But at any rate, we're really lucky to have this one, and we have a new sister to it growing out here in the front yard. So we'll tour the front yard a little bit and then come back through a little more of the backyard. Lucky enough to live in a neighborhood with green space like this. So community parks are so important to have structure like this with native plants near buildings that are more dense and more urban, so that you can have places that are refugia for animals and birds. We like to scatter a few treats for the chippies, and they do appreciate them. This is a baby oak, started from acorn, grew on its own from the original mother oak that was right behind it, that we lost some years ago. So we're letting that one grow. And then right in front of it is a rose bush that does okay. It gets plenty of shade, and another little water trickle here in front for the birds, which they preserve. This is registered backyard habitat. Anybody can do that. You have a couple of feeders with birds on them hanging, and water, and some native things like this dogwood. And right behind it, that's a redbud that got way bigger than we thought it would. And they can always be pruned back. I kind of hate to prune things. Brush, we just throw in piles where it's handy. This is the front yard. Oaks always shed limbs. This is where we throw them, and that's a little chippy haven and for other small critters. And you can see the dogwood is a native. They do have, there's a couple different species, but they have tons of food on them. And in the front yard here, we tried to do a couple native plantings. One over here in the boulevard, we should really do natives in it someday. This is one of the first hybrid elms, I think maybe the first one in the village here, where the village let us pick the trees. They get them for the boulevards, but they let us pick a tree, which is wonderful. Thank you, Tom, with the village for doing that here. And that's an elm hybrid. I think they're originally, or either hybrid or a cultivar from, or maybe it's native down in southern Illinois or something. But at any rate, it's doing really well here. We're glad to see an elm. They were such a huge part of the ecosystem here for years. That's another oak right there that I planted, a swamp white oak, doing really well. Near the location where the mother oak was. This is a little nature free library, and I wrote nature library on it because we try to feature some nature books. It features some things. This is actually bat house on the side. There's little gaps underneath for bats and bugs to crawl in. The siding is loose on there. The house on top was enlarged. We think the hairy woodpeckers nested, but I can't open it. Wasn't really meant seriously. It's more as a demo. But I could loosen the screws and swing one of the top roof pieces up to look sometime, but or run an optic fiber in there. But the woodpeckers loved it this year. We've had black-capped chickadees use it in the past. Native plants in the front yard. I do not have the greenest thumb in the world, but we love this saying: only when the last tree has died and the last river poisoned and the last fish caught will we realize that we need to save nature. Basically, it's a Cree, Native American Cree proverb. This is Monarda. It is a little shady, but it does quite well. Another one that'll do well in sun and shade, and what is our miniature oak opening here is this high, tall Joe Pye weed, which is quite beautiful. They make great nature flower gardens, is what I've been calling them, because a nature flower garden, people understand. They don't understand plant natives, but they understand a flower garden. You just say it's a nature flower garden. Those are one of the many kinds of Coreopsis sunflower family. This particular one seems to do really well in our yard. And ferns, of course, take over everywhere and create some habitat. And whatchamacallit behind it here, yeah, what am I thinking of now? It's an ornamental, but it's blooms early in the year, and so it's great for bees and whatnot. All of these things grow quite well. We had giant, I don't know if there's any right now, but we had giant, there's some bees, smaller bee. Black and golds, it's a wonderful kind of bee. Black and golds are giant bumblebees, almost scary. They look like they're 2 inches long, but like most bumblebees, they're quite placid, quite friendly, and really enjoy. Here comes a squirrel down the tree here. I love to see them start to use the habitat. Those are giant apartment buildings. If you think of dense housing, this is dense nature housing. And we need that in town, just like we need dense human housing in town. We need some dense nature housing. This is an old, I don't know if you can see it against the sun here, an old maple that was huge, and there's a big hole in it that's used by flying squirrels, and we saved that much of it when it was cut down. That was fine with the village and with the neighbors, and it makes sort of a landmark here without sculpting it into anything. We could sculpt it into something with a chainsaw, I suppose, the right artist, but we just left it, and we'll see how long it lasts, and at some point chop it and let it lay on the ground. Having trees out there is important. Some evergreens are really important too in Wisconsin, just for shelter for a lot of species, so we left that. In this area around the tree, I tried to plant some natives, and a few are coming, and there's a big sunflower over there and whatnot, but mostly it ended up being a mass of jewelweed because the neighbors sumped their house, runs once in a while, and we let them put the hose over here to water this nature garden, and of course jewelweed took off. Other natives here, we got some columbine. I'm not sure how native that is, the species we have, but it's wonderful to have. And over here we have a dogwood. Again, dogwood is native. I'm not sure about this particular one, if it was a bit of a cultivar, but dogwood are native to Wisconsin, and they're a wonderful part of the habitat and shelter for things. Let's see. Oh, these are fun. These just come up on their own. These are giant, real Solomon seal, not false Solomon seal, growing in the shade here. And they come every year, and they start to spread. I remember when a prior neighbor across the street had a beautiful row of them in front of the house. And one day I came, and they had pulled them all out because they were going to plant some of these, what do you call them, that everybody puts in around their yards. So I'm like, that's not native. We do have some of those too, but you know, they just pulled out 6-foot-high, beautiful native ones in order to replace them with something that really wasn't any prettier, I don't think. So it's a matter of knowing. Feeding birds, they do love having suet out all the time. And here's another one of those feeders my wife picked out that really lasts a long time. That's a good one. And our baby oak coming. Just love it. Back in through here, there's a feeder hanging in front of the window for the cats, and that's always good to do. Okay, then we go down this way, and we're lucky enough to have a little extra yard, so we basically let it go natural as much as we could. This is a new self-seeded hackberry grove. and I just love hackberries. They will volunteer. You can cut the extra ones. Some people desperately call them weed trees simply because they don't need a lot of work to grow. And they are native, and they have almost as much ecological value as an oak tree in terms of the number of species of bugs, and then up the food chain, all the other critters that they support and birds. They do have berries on them. They're wonderful, and lots of, you can see the bug on the bottom of these leaves, lots and lots of bugs. When you see that and you see bug chews, that means it's working. Bugs are the foundation of our ecosystem. If you have plants and there's no bugs, it's a dead space in many ways. It's only half an ecosystem. So having bugs is wonderful, and you look for signs of that. Back here, this part's also, we sort of let it grow and see what happens. The two things that will come up are like snakeroot and oh God, what's the other one? White snakeroot, and there's one other one that'll come no matter what in Madison here anyway. There's some snakeroot with the classic markings on the leaves. And Jesus, I'm not a plant guy. It's dropping right now. But you get out your Seek application, it'll tell you which one this is. I'm dropping it right now. White pine was native, and so these are actually transplants from our farm in Clark County. Got tiny ones. Really pleased to see them take off. It doesn't take that many years for them to get big. It's surprising. About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 years, maybe 15, 20 on this one. But each ring of limbs is another year. And that's wonderful to have. This we purposely let get overgrown as our brush pile back here, and it's absolutely full of life summer and winter. And that's another snag. This was a maple that was utterly useless ecologically. A lot of introduced maples are. There are native maples, but the introduced maples like a Norway have literally zero ecological value because the toxins in the leaves and whatever they produce, native stuff can't digest, and so they don't support any life. They might look just like another tree, but they're kind of useless. We weren't real sad to see this one go. It was real dark and shaded too much. But look at what a wonderful snag it leaves. That's an owl house up there. And we added a few other bird houses just for fun, which squirrels mostly use. We have had birds use them. We've had a screech owl. So that's a lot of fun. It gives you a place to nail on a planter. There's a chippy saying hi right now. Hi, Chippy. And back here, having, again, any house, if you got a place to hang or put a pole, you can have a feeder here, black-capped chickadees. This is that feeder I showed outside the window on the inside the house tour. We do have the air running this morning because we got company coming, but normally we don't. We pop all the windows open. We were worried it was going to be really hot. Actually, it's pretty nice out right now. And normally with this shade, we lost the old elm, but the other elm, or elm oak, is really shading a lot of the house. It makes a huge difference, but not in the morning. So you want those big shade trees. When we lost this maple, we lost that air conditioner basically. And natural air conditioning is 10 to 20 degrees normally. These are some more of those volunteer, because I'm not a green thumb, volunteer Coreopsis. There's many sunflower family ones. There are ones that look almost identical, have a big flat looking, almost like a daisy top. And some more back here. And this is native Virginia creeper starting to take over the snag, which is beautiful. And that's a native. And it'll slowly use this decaying tree, which the life of trees goes well beyond when they're alive as far as ecological value. Standing are wonderful. The brush heap here now covered with Virginia creeper is wonderful habitat for a lot of organisms. And so that's what we did with this. This is a bull thistle. I understand they're not ideal, but look at all that food that's coming for the goldfinches, which are already congregating in the yard often. We see them. This is going to be a huge one, and it's actually providing structure for the tomato plants that grow here. This is our little herb and seed garden, and the tomatoes are coming through. There's a few other things, fine, let them be, bugs can eat them. And the tomatoes, we'll just have to reach between the thistles to pick tomatoes. I think it's funny. And trees also provide a wonderful place to just do meditation time. As you can see, we like to sit down. I'm a geezer, I like my naps. And back here, where slowly we've had, in the spring we get ephemerals. We get Jack in the Pulpit, and we get trilliums and whatnot, but not a lot. And I'm hoping to get more of that. Some people who know what they're doing could be doing a lot better. This is a beautiful patch of turtle grass. Are any of them blooming yet? Well, we had some blooms here that are done, but if they're still, oh yeah, there's buds coming here. That's an old one. I don't see any popping at the moment, but they're beautiful. This is a C. Started out as a couple plants. This was one that I did pick up at a garden center, and it worked out just great. By the way, this wood fence here is cheap. 1x2 is cheapest thing you can get. If you're actually more of a naturalist like my friend Alex, you would use just found sticks to make your fence. But it is important to provide some support for your tall plants until they get enough variety in their population and density where they're self-supporting. Wisconsin flowers, natural flower gardens can be quite tall. This is a fish pond, which in the wintertime freezes, but maybe you can see it in the picture here. There are some goldfish, which is really beautiful to just enjoy being outside. But you wouldn't believe how many animals come to this duck pond. And we actually have to put up a little fence around here to keep blue herons from coming and picking the fish out. Herons don't like to lift their legs and step across anything, hence the little short fence. Also to make sure our puppies don't accidentally wander into the pond. And that's actually the main backyard feeder right there. We got ducks that have come to this house every year since the 80s and before, and spend time. They usually raise their young in the neighbor's yard. We're sorry to say we would love to have them, but they're here. There's some more natives. This is cup plant, which anybody can grow, and a huge Joe Pye back there. Another white pine, apple tree. I wish I had more fruit trees. This is an attempt at a fruit tree. It's one of my favorite ones as a kid. It's a giant specimen of a chokecherry, and it got blossoms all over it, and it got all over it, but seldom do we see the seeds. I'm not sure if it's not getting pollinated enough. It needs neighbors nearby, but there are some berries, just a few hanging under here, and what there are is wonderful for the birds. So that's fun to see. Bit of a fern garden back here. Again, this is a place we just throw wood piles, and of course the squirrels enjoy it and other things. And another little pine we decided to start here in front of. This is quite the sound buffer too. We're close to Sherman Avenue and the end of Commercial, and it's actually fairly noisy, but you get some greenery growing, especially year-round greenery. There, I hear the catbird. This is Barb's favorite feeder. This is usually covered with mourning doves. These birch are always easy to grow, and they grow quite tall, and that's native. I think these are river birch. And another beautiful oak that volunteered, and it was so stout by the time it was 2 feet tall. The taproot was, of course, probably, 4 feet long at that point. There was no way I could move it out of our little circle garden. So anyway, that's a tour of the yard. Just a couple other things. This is supposed to be a little herb garden, but as you can see, it got kind of overgrown. A few non-natives in front look pretty, but I like to leave like this catnip growing here and other things. Let the bugs have something to chew on. That's the wood pile behind it, and that's also Chippy Haven during the winter. So that kind of concludes the garden tour and accommodation architecture. How do we accommodate birds and critters next to where we live? We leave snags. You can put out feeders to supplement, and also sometimes that supplement is critical. Cornell Labs has theirs up right now, so I have ours up. We keep them clean. There is something going on out east, but I'm almost convinced it's related to toxins and the cicada emergence, given the data that we look at, because it maps directly to it, and the symptoms present themselves as toxicity. But anyway, it's something to be aware of. Always keep your feeders clean. And I hope you enjoyed this little garden tour. And there's constantly birds moving in this yard. There's a chickadee right next to me right now. Hi, little guy. The babies are so funny. So enjoy.